Hello, time for a Man in Gray book review. Today's book is Fire Lover, A True Story by Joseph Wambaugh, published in 2002. It's 338 pages long. This book won the 2003 Edgar Award for Best Fact Crime Book. The Edgar Awards are a series of awards given every year by the Mystery Writers of America. And Joseph Wambaugh is a best-selling writer of crime novels like The Choir Boys and The Onion Field, but he occasionally writes true crime books, and this is one of them. This book is a really fascinating account of the man who was probably the worst serial arsonist in American history, a man named John Orr. John Orr was responsible from the 1980s through the early 1990s. He was responsible for over 2,000 fires, or he's believed to have started over 2,000 fires, one of which, a fire in a hardware store, wound up killing 4 people, including a 2-year-old child. And all of the fires that he set wound up doing, of course, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage. Now, what makes this story so fascinating is not just the fact that he was such a prolific arsonist, but that Orr himself was a firefighter. He was a member of the Glendale Fire Department. And not only that, he was the Glendale Fire Department's chief arson investigator. He was a man who had a national reputation. He wrote important scholarly articles on arson. He spoke at national arson conferences and was often called on to solve particularly difficult arson crimes, or at least trying to find the point of origin of them. And of course, the irony is that many of the fires that he investigated were fires that he himself started. Now, this book is divided into 2 broad sections. The first section gives an autobiography, or not autobiography, a biography of John Orr, and it goes through a timeline of the investigation that led to his arrest for a number of these arson crimes. John Orr was an Air Force veteran, although he didn't get along very well with his commanding officers. And when he left the Air Force, he moved to Los Angeles and desperately wanted to become a police officer. And he went to the police academy and he passed all of his tests except for the psychological evaluation. He failed that. And for that reason, he was turned down by the LAPD. And that just crushed him because he wanted to be a hero. He wanted to be a police officer and wear a uniform and all that. And so he applied to be a fireman with the LA Fire Department. And he failed that also. He went to the fire academy, but he failed the physical exam. But he did get on at the Glendale Fire Department because they were in a desperate shortage for firemen. Glendale paid less than any of the other fire departments in the LA area. And so there was a desperate shortage of firemen. And so he got on there and he gradually rose to the rank of captain and took training to become a fire arson investigator. And of course, he rose through the ranks and became one of that. And it was about this time that he began setting fires. Now, the reason it took so long for Orr to be caught, well, there's 2 reasons. One is that the fire departments and the police departments just couldn't believe that a fireman, let alone an arson investigator, could himself be an arsonist. That just didn't cross their mind. They didn't think it was feasible. And the other thing is, Orr developed an ingenious timing device to set fires and get far away before the fire ignited. He took a lit cigarette and attached it to a book of paper matches so that when the cigarette burned down to the matches, it would ignite the matches. And he often wrapped them in yellow legal paper, which wouldn't catch on fire. And then he often stuffed these incendiary devices in sofa cushions, which had a lot of polyurethane foam, and of course polyurethane is made from oil, and so it's very, very flammable. But it would take several minutes for the fire to burn down to that point, so he was able to get far away. However, and this is one of the things that got him in trouble when he got caught, is when the fires began, after the fire department showed up, he would often go back to the arson area and pull out a video camera and videotape the fires from a distance. When he was arrested and his house was searched, they found boxes and boxes of VHS tapes that had hundreds of hours of fires, house fires, grass fires, that Orr had videotaped. All of these are fires he probably started, and then he came to videotape them. And so it took a long time for him to get caught. Basically what happened, though, is one of his little incendiary devices burned out. The cigarette went out, and they were able to find it. and it had a thumbprint on it, and the thumbprint matched John Orr. Well, at first they thought, well, this is just a mistake because Orr must have handled this. It's a part of his investigation and put his thumbprint on it. But there were some people that began to suspect him, and they noticed that every time Orr went to some kind of fire conference, an arson conference out of town, there'd be a rash of arson fires in the area. And so they got a court order and put a tracking device on his car, his personal car, and his fire department vehicle, and they began following around, and he got caught showing up at an arson fire. When they searched his house, they found cigarettes and paper matches that matched those that were used in the fires. They found all these videotapes, but most importantly, and the most damning evidence, is he had written a novel that he tried to get published unsuccessfully. And in the novel, the novel was about a fire investigator in a California fire department who was an arsonist. And he went through a lot of detail about how the fires were set, including the one that killed the 4 people in the hardware store. He told exactly how that was. What's interesting, too, about that fire is that when that fire happened, originally, the original fire investigators concluded that it was an electrical fire. It was an accidental fire started by an electrical short. And Orr showed up and said, no, it's an arson fire. He kept insisting that this building, this hardware store that killed these people was set by an arsonist. And then when that book, when they found his novel and that description of that, they went back and re-examined the evidence and concluded that Orr was right. Of course, the reason Orr knew it was an arson fire is because he said it. The second half of the book is a long, fairly tedious account of the various trials he went through. Now, Orr always denied having anything to do with that. He said the novel was just a work of imagination and he wasn't really an arsonist. And really, most of the evidence against Orr was circumstantial. Arson is one of the hardest cases to prove in court because a lot of times the evidence is destroyed, and arsonists often don't hang around to watch their fires burn. So it took a while, and there was a lot of legal wrangling before he was finally convicted of murder for those 4 deaths, and he's now serving a life sentence, and he won't be paroled ever. So that part of the book is rather slow going, kind of tedious, and you might want to skip through part of it till you get to the end. But it is overall a really fascinating story, and Wambaugh, of course, is a wonderful writer, very meticulously detailed. He did a lot of research on this fascinating character. So if you're into true crime and you're interested in fires and the psychology of firebugs and pyromaniacs, this is a really fascinating book about a really dangerous, psychotic person who was able to pass himself off as a fire investigator for well over a decade. The book is Fire Lover, A True Story. The author is Joseph Wambaugh, and this has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.